VoyMonk vlog number 80. Yeah. Yeah, this has been a heck of a week. You know, I think the thing I'm thinking about right now is I think in life it's important to know when to pick your battles, especially online, especially when it comes to discussions and arguments, things like that. I mean, how you invest your time, where you invest your time. I mean, I think that's up to everybody to make their own decision. But I think if one wants to go away from, nonsense with a lot less stress, I think it's important to kind of have those perspectives. I think some people's way of dealing with things in terms of being ultra positive and not allowing any negative vibes, I think that can backfire. I think ultimately it usually does backfire because I think once you get certain things to a point where maybe you actually effectively have eliminated everything that's negative or isn't a positive vibe, I think what you can also ultimately wind up putting yourself into is a false expectation of a world that doesn't actually look like the one that you've imagined in a bubble. And then, of course, once one inevitably has to face or be confronted with reality, then usually the tools that one person develops, some people say having a thick skin or whatever, doesn't happen. And then normally something that might not be phased or considered suddenly becomes something that is taken maybe a little bit too far. I mean, I kind of wonder if that's part of what we see in the day and age where everyone's whipping out a phone and recording one another and getting into confrontations or whatever. And when I'm thinking about picking battles and things of that nature, I mean, I think some of the ones that I think about the most are some of the things that happen actually online through content or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think a person can set themselves up for certain things. I mean, if you let certain things in, obviously, there's something to be considered for that. I mean, that's kind of going the other direction in terms of all things positive, right? If you bring in nothing but negativity and a slighted negative view of the world, you could also have, that as something that's to contend with as well, right? Being judgmental or being on the offense when it comes to things that one doesn't like or one perceives it a certain way, I think it can kind of get to the other extreme as well, where, like I said, you're not purging out anything that isn't perceived as a negative vibe. You're embracing anything that is a negative. I think there has to be some balance. And oddly enough, I've come to understand that even balance can be an extreme as well. Sometimes the pursuit of extreme balance is something that one can put themselves in another bubble as though, negative and positives are always something that can be controlled or modulated. Not necessarily sure that's true, at least in my experience. I think for the most part, picking your battles, understanding where you're at. If some person has a disagreement with you, then they do. And keep in mind, I'm not saying anything against bubbles or people have communities and do things that they want to do. That's great. And I do think that there should be rules and some places want to be fast and loose with certain ideas while others don't. I think to each their own. But I do think that in the ultimate grand scheme of things, what it's about, what's important, for me, it's more important about the time that I spend where I want, doing what I want, and less about, figuring it out for someone else, which I think ultimately when it comes to a lot of arguments online, that's where a lot of it comes from, and that's where a lot of it goes. Anyways, that's going to be it for this vlog. Until my next vlog, take care.